I think an enormous factor holding society back from progressing revolves around the assumptions we make about the people around us and our tendency to give into a confirmation bias, whether intentionally or accidentally. While this can be applied to large-scale situations that have had massive historical impacts on groups of people and on the world, it can also be applied to our day-to-day lives and generally how we interact with each other all around. It can be as serious as generalizing an entire category of people into a simplistic viewpoint, or as simple as assuming something out of your friend that ends up not being received in the best way. I honestly really feel like we don't often realize we're stereotyping or assuming things of others or of situations, and that's often what creates a lot of problems for us in the long run, either as individuals or as a society. Anyways, hi, this week's video is focused on stereotypes and the issues they collectively pose to ourselves and the people around us. I think while most stereotypes that prominently exist in society are usually associated with a negative connotation, there are still positive ones out there, like all bass players are attractive, which I've yet to be seen proven wrong, but and it goes further than just stereotyping categories of people. You might be unknowingly doing the same of your friends or the individuals around you based on past actions from them. And they don't always have to be negative. What we often do is we reinforce those beliefs in our head from every experience that confirms them, but we don't actively do the reverse effect for experiences that contradict them. And that's not abnormal, that's actually just a part of being human. But I think the best way to fight that tendency is to actively reflect on your own beliefs and how often you stereotype in your day-to-day life. If you were planning on scheduling a group event and there's a friend that you weren't planning on asking to go because you didn't think they'd like that sort of thing, just ask them anyway. Maybe you're right, maybe they won't like it, but maybe you were wrong, and maybe they'd have been hurt when they found out you didn't think to invite them, even if you had good intentions.
Stereotypes can be harmful, and it's something I've experienced a lot myself. People tend to view things at face value, so they don't think beyond the picture that they see. If you hear somebody is something, you tend to assume aspects of their personality or how they look based on a specific trait. I'm not a fan of stereotypes, but naturally, a lot of people, including me, tend to make them anyway. I mean, when you're mended with the same kind of mindset your whole life, you tend to reciprocate that same behavior. It's pretty damn difficult to eliminate it, as much as you want to, so sometimes I can't help but stereotype people based on first assumptions or first images, just like how I stereotype Quiz to like Weezer.
I feel like there's some sort of general normalization of expressing positive stereotypes because they're a good thing, so it's fine. We head around mentioning negative stereotypes, which we should, but something I've noticed in a lot of my friend groups or just anywhere really is that it's seen as okay to reinforce positive stereotypes about groups of people, so long as the connotation isn't inherently negative. And it's not that I don't understand why that is. I think we often see it as okay and even reinforcing to someone's individuality. Me personally, I joke about the stereotypes associated with my traits pretty often as a way to lighten the mood in certain contexts. I will say that I think while the issue with negative stereotypes may be straightforwardly clear and require less explanation, I do think even the assumptions and stereotypes that aren't based around some aspect of negativity can still pose as a problem. Perhaps not always or in all contexts, but they can have the exact same effect that a negative stereotype does. I think generally speaking, stereotypes and assumptions as a whole can make someone feel like you removed their individuality and reduced them to their baseline traits. That you're not viewing them as their own person, but rather basing your expectations of them on some common belief that might not always apply. So even when you assume something out of someone based off of a positively connotated stereotype of them or whatever group that they fit into, it can put a lot of pressure on them to act a certain way, and it can also make them feel just generally depersonalized. It's not about what you're assuming of them, it's the fact that you assumed anything at all. There are still situations that call for making positively connotated assumptions of someone. Maybe not stereotypes per se, but if you're planning on giving your friend a surprise gift for their birthday party or something, it's kind of necessary for you to assume what they might like, and they may view you as a better friend for your assumption if it was correct. It definitely makes me super happy when my friends and loved ones can predict what's important to me or what I would like, even if it does revolve around assumption. I think generally speaking, something I try to remember and live by is that people can and will surprise you, and making assumptions about how someone will think or act, or what someone believes, limits you to the echo chamber in your own head and will just cause a lot of problems for you going forward in life if it hasn't already.
Positive stereotypes can be good. Enforcing a good word about somebody or a stereotype that they're good at X thing or are, quote, more likely to succeed, which, yeah, that can be nice, but it still warps all expectations and makes you feel worse if you can't succumb to them. Negative stereotypes require no explanation. They pummel you down, make you feel bad, and attach a stigma to any persona or a group of people. I view it as very harmful. I don't think it's foreign knowledge that people can act, talk, and be into what they want to without having to be a part of a certain group or attached to a stereotypical label. Not only is it harmful to those who are a part of those groups, but it's harmful to those who exhibit those behaviors without being a part of those groups as well. Enforcing negative stereotypes can make people feel guilty for certain actions or attach a stigma to a population where it was never necessary.
Something I've noticed about negative stereotypes, even when they're not that serious or don't revolve around anything particularly hateful, is that they, like he said, can make people feel ashamed for their behaviors in any situation where they live up to that expectation. And it makes people feel like they have to be different. And I think it really causes a lot of issues with our sense of self when we feel upset with ourselves for aspects of our personalities that we have very little control over. Something that I've experienced throughout my life and through my childhood was commonly being assumed to be some sort of academic prodigy. You'll never guess why. And as a kid, I remember I never really knew how to process it, since I was kind of ahead just due to parenting and the environment that I was raised in, which is a part of where the stereotype comes from. It is actually a somewhat realistic source to base it off of, and some parts can be true, but that doesn't make it okay. Where I differed from the stereotype was that just because I had a more ambitious work ethic back then, in contrast to some of the other kids in my classes, that didn't mean I was some sort of genius and understood everything and was never wrong. It put a lot of pressure on my shoulders because as school became more academically strenuous in middle school onwards, I slowly felt like I was falling behind simply because I wasn't perfect. And obviously that wasn't true at all, and learning at a different pace doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with you, as that's a very human experience, and it's an unreasonably high expectation to always expect academic perfection out of yourself. But since everyone had always been telling me that I was smart, everyone was always assuming that I was smart, everyone would strengthen the assumption that I was smart every time I performed well in school or sounded remotely smart, I felt my perspective of myself crumble whenever I didn't succeed, because I didn't want to let the people around me down, as if I owed it to them to be someone I wasn't because they just naturally thought that I was. And truthfully, I am most definitely not an academic prodigy, nor was I ever. I'm rock stupid, dude. And something I realized later on in life was that they never thought I was some sort of genius because I actually was. They thought so because I looked like I was supposed to be. And even though it's a stereotype with a positive connotation, since being smart is a good thing, right? It still negatively affected me, and it still does, and I think a lot of people in a similar situation can understand that sentiment. Another thing is that I think there's a lot of infantilization of men of my level of swagger, which I quite honestly find really obnoxious when it's applied to me, because me personally, I don't want you to treat me differently or specially, I just want you to treat me like you would treat literally any other human being. And that might not go for everyone because nothing ever does, but that's why it's so important to avoid lumping people into those types of categories or going out of your way to treat someone differently, including by trying to apply positive stereotypes to them to make them feel accepted, because it might not always be received the way you intended.
One of my most frustrating experiences in high school was the way I expressed myself. Not because it was bad, but because I was somebody who only ever repped the color black. It was baggy clothes, all black, chains, zero flamboyancy. I was a big metalhead and really into hip-hop, and I made these things the forefront of my personality. Now, that isn't the problem. The problem is that it was widely known in high school that I swung a certain type of way, if you know what I mean. Thus, I was bombarded with a lot of questions and stereotypes from my peers that went entirely against how I expressed myself and how I felt with my interests. Looking from a stereotypical standpoint, I didn't really run off the checklist of what a gay dude was into or what, quote, they typically liked. I didn't run off any of the stereotypes. I wasn't into drag, didn't like the color pink, no rainbows, no soft music, nor did I talk with the voice, and I quote, or any of the above. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not bragging. I'm not trying to go, oh my god, I'm different, look at me because I'm different, because none of these things apply now. Unfortunately, I follow a lot of these stereotypes now, except accidentally. But back in high school, that wasn't the case, and I was constantly told that, quote, hey, you don't act gay, or are you sure? I don't think I believe you, pretty much constantly, because I was told I didn't fit the staple, due to not seeming that way or fitting the societal bookmark of what's considered, air quote, gay. Air quote. I mean, the gay thing in itself has brought me an immense amount of stereotypes over the years. Now that I like to think of myself as a highly expressive individual, I get hit with comments all the time that now go, quote, "Oh, you're a little fruity," because of something like painted nails or a little pep in the step. It's funny that in just a few years I now deal with the exact opposite problem that I did in high school. Other instances of being stereotyped are small and creative, positive but also quite a bit negative. It's the typical, "Oh, you're a musician," and they expect me to be able to play any instrument or just drop down and sing on the spot. Or when someone older hears you make videos, they automatically think you're famous. Like family asking what I like to do and then asking me, "Oh, you must make a lot of money," which then I have to respond with, sure. Look, it's silly, and attached to these can be the stereotypical factor of the, quote, starving artist as well. I mean, stereotypically, people don't make it in the creative field that they wish to, at least most of the time. So when I tell someone I do these things like music or videos, they usually ask me, "Do you have a plan B?" Which, girl, no. I don't, and that's a pretty negative stereotype in itself.
So all in all, I think while we can all pretty much agree that stereotypes are bad, and most of us have even experienced those negative impacts at some point through our lives, I think the issues with stereotypes run a lot deeper than we often realize, and basic assumptions about another person or group of people, be it positive or negative, can hurt yourself and the people around you in ways you didn't expect. And yeah, that's all for today. Thank you for collabing with me, Lanuari. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed to his channel yet, then please take a second to go ahead and do so, because it's statistically proven that only lame losers aren't subscribed to the Lanuari YouTube channel, TM Corporation. I do not make the rules, I'm sorry. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for watching, Quiz. I own this channel now. I stole it. Thank you. Goodbye.